Good evening. Welcome to the September 18th, 2023 Cabarrus County Board of Education business session. I'd like to thank and recognize our Teacher of the Year, Ms. Carrie Fugel, our board members Brian Floyd, Sam Treadaway, Keisha Sandage, our Superintendent Dr. John Kopicki, our Vice Chair Rob Walter, board members Laura Lindsay, Pan Escobar, and our Attorney Gil Middlebrooks, and our Board Clerk Christy Spade. We'll move to 1.01, and I will call the September 18th business session to order. We will move to 2.01 for the opening ceremony with the presentation of colors and our national anthem.
Presenting tonight's colors are members of the Northwest Cabarrus High School Air Force JROTC program, and their personnel includes Cadet Caitlin Pond, Cadet Cadence Mullis, and Cadet Devin Dale.
Present colors. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Honoring America tonight with the singing of our national anthem were members of the Cox Mill High School Women's Ensemble, and their personnel includes Dora Darnell, Leah Dean, Mara Derry, Lily Gates, Riley Franchak, Sunaja Hall, Jalen Jacob Gavaskar, Camille Jeanette, Chelsea Jones, Jordan Morris, Ahana Srinath, Noah Tittle, and Ella Wood. The director of the Cox Mill Choral Program is Mrs. Jennifer Cook. Thank you.
Thank you. Board, we'll move to 3.01 when we will adopt the agenda. I need a motion to approve the agenda for the September 18th business session as presented. So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Lindsay, a second by Mr. Floyd. Is there any discussion, board members, about the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda for the September 18th business session, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is approved as presented. We'll move to 4.01, our Impact Through Education Awards, with Mr. Phil Furr. Welcome, Mr. Furr.
Members of the board, Dr. Kopicki, good evening. Tonight we will present Impact Through Education Awards to students and staff at Patriot STEM Elementary School and C.C. Griffin STEM Middle School. Our sponsors for the Impact Awards are our friends at Equitable. At this time, I would like to invite our Equitable representative, Phoebe Son-O and Lauren Barclow, to join me at the front of the room. Before we get started with the awards, please accept our sincere thanks and gratitude to Equitable for its continued sponsorship of the Impact Through Education Awards. Tonight, we begin our 14th year of honoring those making an impact in our schools with this award. We appreciate your support and thank you for helping us celebrate and recognize deserving students and staff. We also want to say a word of thanks to our Cabarrus Regional Chamber and to Concord Trophy Center for providing us with the award plaques each month. Now on to tonight's awards. May I have the Patriot STEM Elementary School administrative team come forward, please. Our first honoree from Patriot STEM Elementary is Grayson Muller. Grayson, please come forward with your family. Grayson is a 5th grade student who was nominated for the Impact Through Education Award by Patriot's Encore teachers. She always helps out in our classrooms and is always a leader to those around her when further support may be needed. Grayson works hard each and every day and never gives up on the things that she is passionate about. Congratulations, Grayson. You are an Impact Through Education Award winner for Patriot STEM Elementary School. Our next honoree from Patriots is Chigozium Naipe. Chigozium, please come forward with your family. Chigozium is also a 5th grade student who was nominated for the Impact Through Education Award by the Encore teachers at Patriots. He is an amazingly hard worker and perseveres through anything that he sets his mind to. He is a wonderful leader and always a reliable student to help out in all of their classrooms. We have all loved seeing his passion shine through when working on his various projects and activities in the classroom. Congratulations, Chigozium. You are an Impact Through Education Award winner for Patriot STEM Elementary School. Also tonight from Patriots Elementary is support staff member Claire Bellis. Ms. Bellis, please come forward with your family. Ms. Bellis is an instructional assistant at Patriot STEM Elementary. She has been nominated for the Impact Through Education Award because of the strong impact she has on the academic progress of students at Patriots. She uses the Hill RAP program to provide intensive reading interventions for their students and has tremendous results. Ms. Bellis identifies student needs and collaborates with staff members in meeting the needs of students. She creates and maintains an effective, well-managed learning environment through positive relationships with students, consistent student engagement, and frequent positive feedback. Her hard work to support our students' growth is invaluable, and we are lucky to have her at Patriots. Congratulations, Claire. You're an Impact Through Education Award winner for Patriots STEM Elementary. And finally, from Patriots Elementary is teacher Erin Scannell. Ms. Scannell, please come forward with your family. Ms. Scannell is a school counselor at Patriots STEM Elementary. We nominate her for the Impact Through Education Award because of her dedication to our students and staff. She always finds time to help and encourage our students and coworkers. She is quick to respond to help anyone in need. In addition to her counselor roles, she leads our PALS Helpers and Chess Club. Ms. Scannell collaborates with families, teachers, administrators, and our community for student success. She advocates to improve equity and access, achievement, and opportunities for all students. She is an invaluable staff member, and we are so thankful she is part of the Patriots community. Congratulations, Erin. You're an Impact Through Education Award winner for Patriots STEM Elementary School. We will now continue with our September Impact Through Education Awards by welcoming the C.C. Griffin STEM Middle School. May I have the C.C. Griffin administrative team come forward, please? Our first honoree from C.C. Griffin STEM Middle School is Jorge Monreal Valles. Jorge, please come forward with your family. Jorge is a hard-working student who tries his best in everything that he does at school. Jorge does not allow language barriers to stop him from succeeding, but instead uses his knowledge of both languages to help other students. His teachers noted that Jorge is determined and resilient and goes the extra mile to complete his work with integrity. C.C. Griffin is lucky to have students like Jorge. Congratulations, Jorge. You're an Impact Through Education Award winner for C.C. Griffin STEM Middle School. Our next honoree from C.C. Griffin is Riley Moulton. Riley, please come forward with your family. Riley Moulton is a friend to all and works well with others. Riley is beloved by many and often seen with a smile on her face. Her teachers note that Riley will often stand up for students and speak up for what's right. Riley is an avid reader who takes her work seriously. C.C. Griffin is lucky to have students like Riley. Congratulations, Riley. You're an Impact Through Education Award winner for C.C. Griffin STEM Middle School. Next from C.C. Griffin is staff member Maria Gray. Ms. Gray, please come forward with your family. Ms. Maria Gray is C.C. Griffin's school ISS coordinator, but does so much more to empower students and support staff. Ms. Gray is joyful and a pleasure to work with because she truly sees the best in every student. Ms. Gray has made the ISS room a place where students have the opportunity to reflect and engage in restorative practices. Students leave ISS feeling heard, valued, and cared for while being held accountable for their actions. Ms. Gray is always willing to give a helping hand whenever needed. C.C. Griffin is lucky to have her as part of their staff. Congratulations, Maria. You're an Impact Through Education Award winner for C.C. Griffin STEM Middle School. And finally tonight, from C.C. Griffin is teacher Anthony James. Mr. James, please come forward with your family. Mr. Anthony James is a phenomenal educator dedicated to students and their academic success. Mr. James is beloved by staff and students alike because of his cheerful demeanor. Mr. James is a bright light at C.C. Griffin, goes above and beyond to ensure students have access to rigorous, relevant, and high-quality math education. He makes an extra effort throughout his day to visit the Living and Learning classroom, all while leading our 7th grade math PLC. Mr. James is a rock star, and C.C. Griffin is lucky to have teachers like him. Congratulations, Anthony. You're an Impact Through Education Award winner for C.C. Griffin STEM Middle School. This concludes our Impact Award presentations for tonight. Congratulations to all our recipients, and thanks again to our partners, Equitable and Cabarrus Chamber of Commerce, for your partnership.
Thank you, Mr. Furr. We'll move to 4.02, our Hillbush Ford Teacher of the Month with Dr. Michael Williams. Welcome, Dr. Williams.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Kopicki, and our viewing audiences both here and those watching the live stream. It is my pleasure to recognize our Hillbush Ford Teacher of the Month for August. We always want to begin with expressing our sincere thanks and gratitude to Mr. Tim Vaughn and Hillbush Ford for their tremendous generosity and continued sponsorship of this wonderful recognition program. Our Hillbush Ford Teacher of the Month for August is Ivy Adams, a pre-K teacher at the Mary Frances Wall Center. At this time, I'd like to invite Ms. Adams, her family, and the Mary Frances Wall administrative team in attendance to please come forward. Tonight, I'd like to share the nomination that was submitted by two parents about Ms. Adams. First parent says, Miss Adams is a godsend. Her patience and kindness throughout my daughter's first year in school are so welcomed. This teacher puts her heart into the profession, and in return, the children that are in her class are so prepared for being positive lights in the world. I mean, every kid from her class was kind-hearted and ready to learn from their classmates. This is not a coincidence. Ms. Ivy Adams deserves sainthood. The second parent says, Miss Ivy is a beautiful light and an example of kindness to her students. Students with Ms. Ivy learn and practice the value of community. They learn to care for each other and to be good friends to others. She always provides a listening ear to students who need extra attention. Ms. Adams, thank you for the impact you have made to teach, engage, and inspire the students in your classroom. Congratulations on your selection as Cabarrus County Schools Hilbish Ford Teacher of the Month.
Everybody kind of get together here. And let me see your certificate. All right, here we go. On three. 1, 2, 3. Got it. Congratulations.
Come right down. Come right down. Here we go.
Thank you. Board will move to 4.03, our Everyday Hero Award winner with Dr. Jonathan Bowers and Miss Amber Diggins. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Kapicki. It is my pleasure to stand before you tonight and introduce this month's Everyday Hero Award recipient. As you know, this award is presented to an exceptional employee within our auxiliary services, which includes our Kids Plus programming, our facilities and maintenance team, our construction team, school nutrition, and transportation services. Sponsored by Great Wolf Lodge, the Everyday Hero Award is intended to acknowledge the outstanding, behind-the-scenes, and sometimes often unnoticed work of our auxiliary services professionals. We all know there's great work being done by these employees every single day, and that should be recognized publicly. Nominations for this award are submitted by Cabarrus County Schools employees, parents, students, and one recipient is selected to be recognized each month. Can I ask Miss Nicole Cavender to come join us down front, please? Yeah, right there, just the green dot. Thank you. Joining me here tonight to recognize Ms. Cavender and her accomplishments are Ms. Amber Diggins, our Director of Kids Plus Programming, and we also have with us in attendance tonight Ms. Julie Barbie, the Principal at Bethel Elementary School. Ms. Diggins is going to share why Ms. Cavender was chosen as this month's Everyday Hero Award recipient.
Thank you, everyone, and good evening. Nicole Cavender has worked for Kids Plus for almost 12 years. She started her career as a substitute group leader with us and then quickly joined us as a permanent group leader and now as a site coordinator. She leads the team at Bethel while simultaneously filling the group leader position there. She demonstrates true team player and community spirit. Nicole's friendly and familiar personality has endeared both parents and children in our program. Parents consistently rave about her attentiveness, compassion, and love for the children. She received a multitude of nominations for this award, and I'd like to share just a few excerpts with you. These are mostly from parents. She is always joyful. You can really tell she loves her job. Nicole fosters an environment for our kids and families that creates a sense of community, which has become more rare and therefore more needed and valued. Nicole really takes the time to get to know the students and their interests and personalities. She does a great job taking care of the kids, and I know my child is in good hands. She runs an amazing program at Bethel and is very involved. When entering the center, the center vibe is fun, loving, and calm. I have been to other child care programs and was not happy with how I felt when leaving. At Bethel, I do not have that feeling. The child care environment needs more teachers like Miss Nicole. Ms. Cavender always goes above and beyond with the children. She is attentive and caring She is easy to communicate with and makes herself available to parents when needed. It is very noticeable that she has a special bond with the children in Kids Plus that creates a lasting relationship. She is definitely an everyday hero, and we could not agree more. Not only does she do a phenomenal job with the parents and children in our program, she understands the importance of building positive relationships across the district. She collaborates with her fellow site coordinators, she volunteers to assist her sister schools, and she is very involved in the Bethel community. And I have Miss Barbie here with me this evening, and I would like to ask that Miss Barbie share her nomination for Nicole.
Nicole is an amazing site director. She is fully invested in how her work connects to the work of the classroom. Nicole understands the importance of forming and maintaining relationships with kids, families, and school staff. Nicole also understands the importance of showcasing her program and Kids Plus. She always reaches out to district staff and invites them in to highlight the work that is happening in Kids Plus. She is a great leader. We are so blessed she is a part of the Bethel Learning family.
And I second that. Nicole's pure heart demonstrates a true love and passion for serving the children and families in our community. She is well loved by all, and we are very happy to announce that she is our everyday hero. Congratulations.
There we go. All right. You guys can. She's your hero too, right? 1, 3. 1, 2, 3. I have it. Thank you so much. All right, one more. Here we go. 1, 2. Oh, one more. 1, 2, 3. Perfect.
Thank you, board members. We'll move to 5.01, where we will approve the open session minutes for August 7th and August the 14th. I need a motion to approve the open session minutes as presented.
So moved.
I need a second.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Lindsay, a second by Mr. Floyd. All those in favor of approving the minutes as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes have been approved. We will move to 6.01, board chair comments. Board members, I want to thank you again for your commitment to the kids of Cabarrus County Schools and for taking time from your busy schedules for school visits, athletic events, and band presentations over the last several weeks. One of the great leadership quotes that I like is, "The most powerful leadership tool you have is your own personal example," by John Wooten. We'll move to 6.02 with our superintendent comments with Dr. John Kopicki.
Thank you, Mrs. Adcock. Before I begin, I just wanted to again thank our teachers and our staff and all those folks that are involved on a daily basis in making sure that our students have a very, very safe, secure environment. Their challenges are immense, and the work that they do is amazing, and I do deeply appreciate those efforts that go into making sure that our kids are getting a first-class education here in Cabarrus County Schools. And without our teachers, our support staff, and all the people and our administrators that go into that, that would not occur. So I thank them for that. Secondly, I just want to read a quick kind of statement, a little more of a kind of trying to educate and keep people up to date on our realignment process. Cooperative Strategies is here tonight, and they will be giving a presentation, but I want to inform the public of some things that are taking place, because this is a process that is occurring over a year, and probably in retrospect and looking at a lot of the information and data that's coming our way, it'll probably take a little longer than that to fully realize this plan, as you'll see this evening. And I'd like to commend our board for giving us the flexibility and the freedom to look at the data and the evidence that drives a lot of the decisions that we will have to make moving forward. And I would remind our board as we started this out in the beginning to keep your objectivity to completely stay out of the process until we bring the recommendations to you, and then those decisions are going to be at your hands, and you're going to have to make those decisions. And we want to make sure that we keep this above board, and it's not political, and that the information that we give you is as straightforward as it can be, and you're making decisions based off data, evidence, what's best for kids. And to our public, I fully understand that there's a lot of rumors, a lot of innuendo, and a lot of social media out there. Zero decisions have been made to this point. We haven't even begun to talk about, where kids are going in terms of a realignment discussion. We've talked a lot about a master build plan and how important that it is to make those decisions first before we can even talk about realignment. And we understand the emotion, we understand the stress that this creates on families and people in the district. And our intent and our purpose from the get-go was to be as communicative to the public and the community as we possibly could be. And we've done that thus far. Every step of the way, we have placed all of our meeting agendas on our CCS Engage site. We've created that site purposely for this process and other things, but mainly for our realignment process. Mr. Phil Furr has done a great job in keeping the community up to date on all the meetings that we've had, all the presentations we've had, all the things that we've done thus far on that site. There is a Q&A on there. Oftentimes I would ask the public, again, you have to be patient. It's not an excuse, it's reality. We are being thoughtful and taking our time as we work through this process. Sometimes the answers just aren't ready yet because we don't have them, because we're working through a lot of the data and a lot of information. We are a district of 35,012 students as of Friday. I think it's gone up today. 45 schools, 360 plus square miles. There's an enormous amount of information that goes into this process. We want to be thoughtful and take our time as we go through it so we get it right. And I'm going to be very clear about this. We're not going to please everybody. That is just point of fact. But that is not our goal. Our goal is to make sure that we're taking care of our children and doing the best we can to provide that safe environment for them and making sure that we are looking at our alignment, that it is serving our students and our community in the best way possible. So I just say all that to say to folks, we have to remember to be patient. And I know it's a very emotional topic and a very emotional subject, and everybody has a lot of opinions and thoughts, but we are working off of evidence and data, and that's what will drive the decisions as we move forward. Part of the process that we engaged in with the cooperative strategies was to have our community focus groups put into place. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that now. So our community focus group for the realignment process is a component of the overall community engagement strategy. The intent is to bring together various stakeholders representing different perspectives throughout the school district. Members will serve in an advisory role while maintaining a district-wide focus and not advocating for a specific area. The community focus group will be comprised of individuals who represent a broad cross-section of both school and non-school members of the community and will include stakeholders such as parents, school staff, and administrators, higher education leaders, community and business organizations, representatives from the city and the county government leaders. The community focus group's application will open tomorrow, Tuesday, September 19th at 8 a.m. and will close on Friday, October 6th at 5 p.m. The application may be found by visiting our district engagement website at www.engagewithccs.com and clicking on the Long Range District Realignment Project link. In a district the size of Cabarrus County Schools, all geographic regions will be represented based on areas defined by the current CCS high school attendance zones. Representation on the focus group will be determined by a lottery selection. The community focus group will meet virtually remote on 5 separate occasions to review background information, evaluate boundary criteria, and provide feedback on draft boundary options. The meetings are scheduled for mid to late afternoon on the following dates: October 11th, October 25th, November 15th, December 6th, and January 3rd. The community focus group can help to develop communication documentation for the general community. review community dialogue results, and develop options and recommendations to present to the CCS community and Board of Education. Cooperative Strategies' role will be to foster data-driven discussions by equipping district leaders and community stakeholders with analytical tools, all from the same data, all with the same constraints and opportunities, so that redistricting plans are created in a productive, dialogue-rich process. Again, the Community Focus Group application will open tomorrow, Tuesday, September 19th at 8 a.m. and will close on Friday, October 6th at 5 p.m. The application may be found by visiting our district engagement website and clicking on the Long Range District Realignment Project link. So again, we are welcoming you to apply for that. If you have any questions or this is unclear for anybody, I would encourage you please call the central office. You can call my office, and my executive assistant is Ms. Christy Spade. You can call Mr. Phil Furr. He is our Director of Public Information and Communications. Or you can reach out to Dr. Bowers, who is one of the gentlemen who is leading this process. And he is head of our school performance auxiliary services. So any one of us can help you walk through this process. We will be very open and honest about who is on the committee. We are forming two 25-member committees. So we'll have 50 people from the community of all various backgrounds and ranges to try and have a great cross-section that represents the community as we move forward to this process. And again, I remind everyone, just be patient. I commend my board for taking the courage to engage in this process. And then I just remind my board of their responsibilities to be objective and not engage in any, not that you do, but it would be remiss of me as a superintendent not to say we want to remain apolitical in this and stick to the data, the evidence, and the facts. So make sure that we do that the best that we can. Our Futures Fair, the Cabarrus County Schools Future Fair, will be held at the Cabarrus Arena on Monday, October 16th from 6 to 8 p.m. Again, this year, the Futures Fair will combine our Program Choice Fair, our College Fair, and our Career Fair into one event. Last year's inaugural Futures Fair was informative for our families and well attended. We hope you'll be able to join us on October 16th. And then lastly, I want to issue a public apology to our community. I think when you make mistakes and you get things wrong, you have to own them and stand up for the right reasons and say, hey, you know what, we made a mistake. We have to own this mistake and acknowledge it. So if you indulge me for a moment, I will explain. So before I begin tonight, I'd like to address a situation that occurred on Saturday during the Cabarrus County Showcase of Bands. As part of the annual event, spectators and marching band members are given the opportunity to write what is called airgrams, which are meant to offer words of encouragement and congratulations at the conclusion of the band's performance. These airgrams are then read over the public address system as the marching band exits the field. Unfortunately, one of these airgrams, which was directed from one of our students to another, included racist remarks and phrases that have no place in either our schools or our society. Cabarrus County Schools does not condone nor tolerate this type of behavior or language, and I assure you the situation will be dealt with appropriately by school administration, and it has been today. I would like to personally apologize to all those in attendance on Saturday who were disgusted by this senseless act of racism. I would also like to apologize to the host school, Mount Pleasant High School. Mount Pleasant is a supportive, inclusive community who welcomes our students and families to their campus, and they did so on Saturday for a day of celebration for the performing arts. This act in no way reflects the values of Mount Pleasant High School or the Mount Pleasant community. So again, to the entire Mount Pleasant community, to the Cabarrus County at large, I apologize on behalf of the airgram being read inappropriately on Saturday evening. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. Kubicki. We'll move to 6.03 with our board attorney comments with Mr. Gil Middlebrooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The budget bill, which contains raises for all of the educators in Cabarrus County, remains tied up in the dispute over non-tribal casinos. But I do have some good news on a slightly different front. Earlier this week, the Senate passed a bill that has changes making it easier for potential principals to get principal licensure. And that bill now goes back to the House for concurrence, and if passed and signed by the governor, will make it a bit easier to get new principals into school buildings more quickly. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's all for me.
Thank you. Any questions about that, board members? Okay. We will move to 7.01, our guest speakers address the board. It's now time for public comments. Each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes to speak, and an individual speaking for a group may be allowed up to 5 minutes at the discretion of the board chair to express interests and concerns related to the official business of the board and the school district. The speakers will be called in order in which we receive the request. A person may not be substituted for a speaker, nor may one speaker donate time to another speaker. If a speaker runs out of time, then the speaker may leave the additional information with the board clerk. Statements reasonably perceived to be disruptive or imminently threatening to the orderly operation of the meeting shall not be permitted. Any limitation on public comment shall be viewpoint neutral. The board chair has the authority to rule the speaker out of order. If a speaker or attendee willfully interrupts, disturbs, or disrupts this meeting and refuses to leave after being asked by the board chair, then the speaker may be escorted out and could be arrested for trespassing or disrupting an official meeting. Board members will not respond to individuals who address the board except to request clarification of points made by the presenter. Our first speaker is Sabrina Berry. Is Ms. Berry present? Okay, we'll go for our next speaker is Megan Fries. Good evening. If you can cut that mic on there.
Talk
That's
button.
it.
That helps, right? Okay, everyone can hear me now? Thank you. Dr. Kapicki, Madam Chair, members of the Cabarrus County School Board of Education, good evening. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to represent concerned parents united in a common cause. Although we know no official decisions have been made yet, we want to be proactive and state that our common cause is to preserve the Odell Primary, Odell Elementary, and Harris Road Middle Schools within their current boundaries. Our message is unequivocal. We, the families of Odell and Harris Road, are resolute in our desire to remain where we are, a sentiment echoed by 647 signatures and counting on our petition. We acknowledge the challenges proposed by overcrowding, but we firmly believe that relocating our children to another overcrowded school is not a viable option. Our unwavering commitment to this cause is fueled by our unwavering commitment to our children's education and well-being. These young minds have endured the trials of a pandemic that greatly disrupted their education. It's vital to remember that these children persevered thanks in no small part to the support and dedication of the Odell Harris Road School community, a network of educators and staff who stood by our side during those trying times. The long-term mental health effects of this pandemic are still unfolding, and we cannot subject our children to further upheaval through rezoning. Research underscores the importance of a child's school community in nurturing their social, emotional, and intellectual development. Forming and maintaining friendships in early childhood are crucial for healthy relationships throughout their life. Rezoning would not only impact the children leaving, but also those staying, because it would sever some of the vital social connections they've made. Moreover, consistency is paramount for children, providing them with boundaries and expectations that foster a sense of safety. Research indicates that non-promotional school mobility generally harms academic performance, including reading and math scores, and high school graduation rates. We understand plans for a new school in our area may be underway, potentially alleviating overcrowding. However, if rezoning is added to the mix, our elementary students face multiple disruptive school changes, compounding the negative academic and social impacts. In addition, many of the families potentially affected by rezoning are concerned about moving students to a different overcrowded school that in most cases is farther from home for their children, taxing an already exhausted transportation system and further infringing on the educational benefits of attending our nearest schools. Another point of vital consideration is the innovative play-based education initiated at Odell Primary, a program pivotal to our community's future. Rezoning would disrupt this study and hinder the success of rising first graders unable to continue in a school where the model does not exist. While we acknowledge the complexity of addressing overcrowding, we implore the board to explore alternatives such as assigning new communities in our area to other schools, particularly those with no prior ties to Odell or Harris Road. We also encourage collaborative efforts within the City Council to discuss long-term solutions, including a housing development moratorium until our infrastructure, including schools, can catch up with population growth. As parents and members of the Cabarrus County community, we greatly value transparency regarding the realignment studies process and its impact, including some of the updates you provided today, such as when the applications for focus groups will become available. We also want to express concerns about the proposed timeline for the district realignment study and the January target date for boundary recommendations, as this does not give us the appropriate time to respond to proposed changes. In closing, copies of our petition and additional research that I mentioned will be provided via email to each board member. We sincerely thank you for your attention and consideration in this matter, and we trust that you will make a decision that reflects the best interest of our beloved children and our community as a whole.
Thank you. Ms. Heather Jones. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to come today. This is my son Zion Jones, in whom I am speaking on regards of as a concerned parent at Mount Pleasant High School. On September the 14th, my son received a disciplinary action in regards to failure to show his cell phone to his principal when asked. So at that time, there was an allegation that new photos were circulating around the school and that the subject of the photos were potentially an underage student. Multiple students had reported that my son was one of the students in possession of the nude photos and shown to others. At that time, my son Zion was asked to be shown his phone. He was informed that if he had any type of nude pictures on his phone, he would be suspended for 5 days, regardless whether they were of him or of another person. At that time, he refused. At that time, the school contacted me, and his incident report reads, Zion's mother was contacted in hopes that she could assist administration in the search. Ms. Jones shared that she did not want to show the contents of his phone to the administrators. Later, both Ms. Jones and Zion were informed that refusal to consent to a search will result in an out-of-school suspension. I wrote a letter at the same time to the superintendent stating the guidelines of my case. My son told Principal Jacobs and Assistant Principal Lamb that he did not have any inappropriate pictures of the alleged victim and was informed that he would be given 5 days for refusal to consent of the search. I was called around 11:30 and asked if I could convince my son to show them his phone to avoid being suspended for 5 days. I asked if he does have the inappropriate photos on his phone, will he still be suspended, and I was advised yes. At this time, I requested to be present for the search and was denied, stating that consent for parents to be present during the search was not allowed, and I at that time requested to receive written documentation stating that I could not be present from policy documentation. I was then informed at that time that a subpoena could be requested by the SRO to search his phone and criminal charges could be issued. At that time, I asked to go to the school and I was there within 10 minutes. I informed Principal Jacobs that my son would have complied with my request if I was present, and at that time she advised me that he would be suspended for 5 days as punishment. I would like to be able to have the opportunity to hand over the disciplinary action that was given from the school, and also my letter to the superintendent, just showing that I feel that this action was inappropriate, and 5-day suspension is just too long for out of school for refusing to show a cell phone.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Our board clerk will take your information. Okay, our next speaker is Brian Escoveria. Good evening.
Good evening. Here we go. Thank you for serving on the school board. That's number one. Our state just passed the Parents' Rights Bill, and tomorrow at 6 p.m. at Gibson Mill Market, we're actually having Senator Paul Newton explain what that means for our children and our families. And while it's shameful, actually, that we need a Parents' Rights Bill, history is not going to ask us about a Parents' Rights Bill. History won't ask us about Republicans or Democrats. It's not going to ask us about liberals or conservatives. It's actually going to ask us, where were the men? When women started being celebrated on Father's Day, where were the fathers? Where were the fathers when a 17-year-old boy was hugged up with a 16-year-old girl and got her pregnant? History's going to say, where were you when some weirdo wanted to talk to your kids about sex and sexuality? When a predator wanted your sons to become daughters and your daughters to become sons? History's not going to ask us about politics. No, sir. History's going to ask us where the men were. And the thing about it is, when we consider 2020 and the mask and the looting and the robbery, history's going to say, where were the men when those people were destroying our communities? School board meetings, commissioners' meetings, town halls will be real different if we had 50 fathers standing in there talking to everyone. Because we all know that the danger that men present actually provide us the safety that we all live under. That is what we need. We need men, we need fathers to step up. An entire nation is begging for men to step up. I'm not asking for men to be strong. I'm asking for men to be men. Because what is history going to say about this generation? As a Christian, I get it. Abortion, homosexuality, that may be insulting to my faith, but I think the sin of this generation, the problem of this generation, is going to be defined by the passivity of men. Where were the men is the question that people are going to be asked. What is history going to say about us? So while I'm thankful that we do have a Parents' Rights Bill, I understand that it's going to take more than that, because all over the state there's news about people trying to circumvent it. So tomorrow, Senator Newton will be with us at Gibson Mill at 6 p.m. to talk about the Parents' Rights Bill and what it means for our children and our families. Dr. Kopicki was invited. I did not get a response, but I'm sure that we have a solid strategy in Cabarrus County to implement the Parents' Rights Bills, because all we want is to be able to answer the question, where were the men? Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Okay, board members, we will go to 8.01, committee reports. Are there any committee reports, board members? Ms. Sandage?
So the Child Protection and Fatality Team, we met on 8/22/23 and discussed concern around runaways. And then the Mental Health Trauma Focus Group also met on 9/14 and just identified goals for the new mental health facility that will be coming to Cabarrus. We determined that we will create a focus group to help align with what the mental health site should look like. What should they offer? What do we need in Cabarrus County? And if you have any thoughts or any suggestions, please feel free to email me and I will make sure that gets to our group.
Thank you. Any other reports, board members? Okay. We'll move to 8.02 with our realignment update with Dr. Jonathan Bowers. Good evening.
Good evening once again, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Kopicki. It's my pleasure to be with you tonight to welcome Cooperative Strategies back to Cabarrus County Schools. As you recall, Mr. Sturts was with us back in the month of August and had a chance to be able to provide us with an update on the realignment study and analysis. That initial presentation involved a data framing exercise and also gave us an insight into a facilities condition review. Tonight he's come to share some additional work that he and his team have done regarding our facilities master plan and some recommendations that they have to offer for the board to consider moving forward. So this will be the next iteration and the next phase of where we stand in the realignment. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Sturts and allow him to present.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Kopicki. Good to be with you as always. So I'm going to go through the facility options development slides. You've seen this data in framing it, but it bears repeating as the sequence of data discovery to options, considerations to recommendations will follow the same logic when we apply that to the feeder pattern and boundary analysis to follow. But as Dr. Kopicki and Dr. Bowers both set the table, that feeder pattern and boundary analysis is going to, on the one hand, look to address current realities in your current portfolio of schools and addressing some of the challenges that this presentation will introduce, as well as set up and be prepared for what we hope for, hopefully, will be the implementation of these recommendations. So, assuming I can use this correctly, let's try this. All right, there we go. So the key planning goals, as we've mentioned before. So what is the data that we analyzed telling us? One, that we need to get ahead of deferred maintenance. You have about $500 million, half a billion in deferred maintenance that has arisen since 2018. Our goal is to prioritize major renovations or rebuilding of schools where the identified need is gets close to or exceeds 50% of the school's replacement value. That's just good math when it comes to capital investment. But it's not as we say, no one piece of data is a dictator. We also want to look at utilization. We want to look at program needs. We want to look at school size. We want to look at site size. We want to look at the whole picture. And so that's what you'll see in the coming slides. Balance utilization and address growth. It is no surprise that you are growing, and we have lots of slides that you have seen, some in the past, that illustrate that, and that it's a need to get ahead of that growth, rather, in your case, catch up, and do so with the last point being do so without further reliance on portables as your main strategy to address that growth. Where you have 1 in every 10 available classroom in the district is in a mobile unit, and our recommendations, which we will show you, really go to not eliminating portables, because you're going to need some, but doing a substantial reduction in that and rebuilding schools and building new capacity in the process. Since 2018, the district has received just under $35 million in deferred maintenance and identified that $483 million in need. 70% of which has been in mechanical and major construction needs, and during which time 7 new campuses have been built. And you can see the breakdown there and the difference between what has been funded by building system and what has been identified in need, where many of them are off by a significant margin. Part of the challenges is not just growth, but as we've gone through in the past, capacity, where your policy at the state level has reduced the amount of kids that you can have in your typical elementary school from a classroom of an elementary school of 40 classrooms before HB 90, having 900 capacity, to that same school actually having less than 800 capacity and needing an additional classroom to boot to have to even meet that amount, which is a loss of 12% of your capacity. The district-wide impact was equivalent to the district losing 2.5 to 3 elementary schools worth of capacity when HB 90 passed. This slide shows the next 3 slides where the facility condition index, which is the cost to repair your buildings versus the cost to replace, is on the y-axis. The utilization, which is the capacity versus, the enrollment of the school versus its capacity, is on the x. Your sweet spot that we aim to be at is between 80 and 100% utilized, and less than 30% FCI. You can see where your elementary schools are quite literally all over the map in this grid. And the furthest right column, that is the highest utilized in the worst condition, is McAllister STEM. That is, you are rebuilding that, and so you saw this data before you saw this data and saw the need. And so this is taking that same approach and looking through the rest of the schools. And your goal, of course, is to get every school in the box, in the sweet spot over time. Middle school utilization is not nearly as painful as it is at the elementary and high levels, where you have some under, some over. So you are imbalanced at the middle levels, and over time in the utilization will show you will lose that surplus capacity in short order too. High schools are also on either side of your ideal utilization spread, but on the net overutilized and going to get even more painfully so without new capacity added in the future, as well as some of your high schools creeping up there on that FCI and needing some help on the condition side. This graph, this has been updated since the last time you saw it with our capacity, our enrollment projections. We were using the previous demographer's projections to date. We've updated this with our demographies team, and it simply exacerbates the challenges, that shows an exacerbation of those challenges that we've had in the previous work. Where the red boxes show your mobile unit capacity and the blue is your permanent, the black bar is your enrollment. So in time going back to 08, you can see quite vividly that the district's been able to keep up with growing populations through the use of mobile unit capacity. And while you did have a slight drop during the pandemic, you have roared back and are continued on the growth trajectory. Elementary school is very acute, needing over 3,600 permanent seats by 2032, based upon looking at the enrollment projections and the permanent seats that you need replacing mobile units. At the middle levels, you can see that you're better off right now. You actually have capacity at the middle level in the current year, but by the end of this decade, you will no longer. As that large elementary cohort builds itself through the system and gets into middle school, it's going to surpass your middle school capacity just the same. It's just a bit of a lag there. And then it's going to keep going to your high schools, where you will be short a little over 2,000 seats by 2032. Permanent seats, again, you need new high school capacity. You need new elementary capacity. You can't even rely on portables anymore. Some of your schools won't fit anymore. When you look at the sum, this is not a great slide for a PowerPoint, but what it gives you is the visual that this is every school. It's year open, it's acreage, and for the public and those looking at it right now, the yellow bars are the deficiencies, or the further that bar goes over, the higher the deficiencies. And the FCI is the same. That's the cost of those deficiencies relative to the replacement. The logic that we look here is that when a building, certainly when it approaches or exceeds 50% FCI, you have to ask the question, is this building worth a major renovation to keep it going? And knowing that when I do a major renovation on an older building, I am almost inevitably going to lower its capacity, because many of these older buildings were built with smaller class sizes and more homogeneous class sizes. And in doing a major renovation, to update it from an adequacy standpoint so you can actually do the kind of teaching and learning that you want to do besides sit and get in the classroom, you're going to actually lose some classrooms. And so our old, small schools in high condition, that is behind the logic of why we're recommending, in one case here, where you actually do take some of your old, smaller schools and do a newer, fewer model, replace it with a right-sized school. And you can see, if you can squint or you have really good vision, that your oldest elementary schools are half or less than half of the square footage of your newest. This is just from an equity standpoint, looking at where do I have the highest FCIs and how does that line up with percent economically disadvantaged, as we looked at based on a free or reduced lunch perspective. And what you see is those in the red dotted box there kind of highlight where you have the highest FCIs in your older schools. And so you can track Beverly Hills and Wolf Meadow and Coltrane Webb are high on FCIs. They are older schools. They are on the smaller side. They are the smallest, with the exception of Callister STEM, which is in the process of being rebuilt to your modern, to your standard size. So these Coltrane Webb, Wolf Meadow, and Beverly Hills are certainly stand out as next in line when you look at all of the data points combined. So again, you look at those three schools, the average FCI of all other elementary schools is 16, and you can see these FCIs are 67, 81, and 40, 83 and 41 respectively, so significantly higher condition indices at these schools than the lot, or the rest of them. As we look ahead at the historic enrollment by grade level, elementary, middle, and high, you can see the capacities of your schools. You have a capacity of just under 15,000 at the elementary, just over 8,700 at the middle, and 12,000 at the high. And you can see the enrollment in time 2014-15 to present to projected. You can see that growth across the span in time, leading to your current overutilization at the elementary and high utilization at the middles and highs, going to overutilization across the board absent any further actions. You have 3 elementary schools under 500 enrollment, and they are 40% older, with 2 to 3 times the FCIs of their larger schools. And they also have surplus capacity, which indicates that there's an opting out of that situation. And all schools have relied on portable capacity is another key point here. When we look at the equity analysis by feeder pattern, again, not the best, kind of dizzying in one respect on this PowerPoint, but if you look closely, these are the high school networks, elementary, middle, and high, Central Cabarrus, Concord, Cox Mill, etc. And across the top, you see the ages of the schools, the FCIs on average, the square foot per student, which is a great indicator of how much room that the students and teachers have to work with. It really normalizes the adequacy indicators there. So you can see, for example, Central Cabarrus High School has 109 square feet per student. If you look down at the other high schools, it's 120, 155, 149, 171, 161, 69, 129, and 143. So they have a lot less room to work with per kid, hence the 36% of the capacities in mobile units. You need more mobiles. You need more space. So that gives you a good indicator there of some of the need. Utilization and number of surplus seats, which can be negative. The 7-year composite academic performance data, and the percent economic disadvantage. And what I'm not going to read all of these points as I've gone over them in the past, but they are on record, just to point out that you have some of the highest economic disadvantage in the students served in the Concord area at the oldest schools with the highest FCIs. That is something that we know. That's where we use data to help drive some of how we pry and look into the options. What makes sense? How can we address some of these issues? And that Northwest Cabarrus is not far behind on the high school age and the FCI. And you can see these are how we identified some of the key drivers behind the recommendations you are about to see. Feeder pattern analysis, as Dr. Kapicki mentioned, the focus groups, we provided to the district a framework for how we recommend setting up focus groups in terms of representation. The district said thank you very much and then doubled it so that you have plenty of representation across the district. And that process will follow this same kind of logic where we introduce what data do we have to work with, what is that data telling you. Our job, as Dr. Kapicki mentioned, is to be objective, and that we will. We're going to provide the committee and with you all what we see in terms of the data, what our experience tells us are challenges and opportunities within the data to address, and what some examples are, what some other districts have done in similar circumstances. And this process will provide you a stage-gated feeder pattern and boundary process recommendations so that it gets you through these facilities recommendations, which you're about to see, which we think can be transformative. The challenge of what we're about to show you in the recommendations, it's going to take some time to get those recommendations funded and implemented. So reasonably speaking, probably earliest that you would have new ground broken on one of these schools, 4 years, 5 years. And so this gives you a plan, we will get a plan to get you through that, and then a plan to build on this master plan, while at the same time, and this is something we do with fast-growing districts all across the country, minimizing the number of double hops that any community would have to do in the process. So we're cognizant of sort of looking at each stage as combined to each other in developing your boundaries. And I'm talking about all that and nothing on the slide. So let me go back to the slide. What this shows you is that this is your feeder pattern analysis, and it shows the percent of kids at each school that go on to the next grade level. So 23% of J.N. Freeze Middle School students go on to Central Cabarrus High School, and the rest is coming from C.C. Griffin. And then you can see J.N. Freeze is fed 20% of its kids are from Rocky River Elementary School. And as you kind of go through each of these, you can see you have lots of little splits. This is something we've talked about in the past. This is just a byproduct of boundaries sitting where they have been while populations haven't over long periods of time. And so you have a wide variety of feeder splits, to put it one way. And so schools that are split in many different ways, which, just for public's record, this is not just a theoretical balancing exercise. Having lots of splits in your system really challenges the abilities of each grade level to work with each other and plan for upcoming cohorts, and do so in a way that really builds that continuity in the long term for the most students in a way that you can sustain. That is our goal. And when we do this, and when we develop options, for the master planning, when we develop options for your boundaries, is what's best for students, all students, in a long-term perspective, in a manner that you can maintain. Because whereas facility master planning, we recommend doing every 5 years or so. If you can avoid doing major boundary changes every couple years, you'd probably be happy with that too. So when we look, how do we develop the recommendations? One, when looking at your elementary schools, you really could use 4 elementary schools in the coming few years by 2032. 4. We're recommending that you start with 3, at least 3. So we're recommending that 3 new elementary schools to accommodate growth and replace most but not all portables. Also, in growth at middle school, sit tight, but plan that by the end of this decade, you're going to need new middle school capacity too. Keep up with your deferred maintenance at the middle school level. Catch up, rather. High school enrollment, capacity enrollment, you need at least 1 new high school to accommodate growth. You have the site near Bethel. And that's just from the growth perspective. But you can't have all of the funds go into growth, because you have a large portfolio of buildings that have $500 million in current needs, and those needs are going up. You need to address the building conditions at your oldest high schools with the highest FCIs. Northwest Cabarrus and Central Cabarrus. We are recommending in total that you build 3 new elementary schools and 1 replacement elementary school. That for Beverly Hills and Coltrane Webb, that you build 1 school for those 2. That's right size to your modern size and capacity. That you build 1 new high school, as mentioned. That you replace Northwest and Central Cabarrus high schools. And what that does from a utilization standpoint is it takes what would be 125% utilization at your elementary level and drops it down to 104. Still full. Middle school is steady. No change at the middle school level. you're going to be overutilized. High schools, 97% utilized when you build a new high school and you replace 2 high schools with more capacity. So, you need capacity yesterday. And you're going to need a lot of it in the coming few years. All of this reduces your mobile unit, your reliance on mobile units from 153 down to 36 based on my projections. That's over 100 mobile units that you don't have to no longer have as a liability. They're not free, and they do have needs, and they have shorter lifespans than your permanent buildings. And so you're going to need some, and you're going to need to build after this. This master plan is phase 1. It will require phase 2. When we looked at your building conditions, one of the simple models to look at is to industry standard, you should be budgeting at least 2% of a building's current replacement value for annual capital improvements, maintenance and operations, or M&O for short. Based upon what you've actually received, if you would annualize that over the next 10 years, you receive $7 million. Based upon your replacement value of your buildings being at $2.5 billion worth of facilities, you need 50 at 2% of that. So you've been at 7. The model would suggest 50. Based upon what we've identified with your team, we're recommending that you budget 36 annually. And going back to one of the first slides, you've received 35 in 5 years. We're recommending 36 annually for 10 years. Bit of a jump. But the deferred maintenance, as its name suggests, doesn't go away. It just gets more deferred and more expensive, and starts to, a roof problem starts to become other problems, starts to become other problems. So you're going to spend a lot of money in Cabarrus County. Question is how. Looking at those maintenance items, we've broken them down by your smaller projects in under 500,000 and your larger projects above, using your capital improvement data over the past several years. And that's your total of 365. You can see 281 of that is in your larger projects. The lion's share of that are your mechanicals. That's keeping that air clean, cool, and sometimes warm, depending on your season. So all total, in current dollars, estimated being the opportunity word here, because over time you would develop specific project budgets, but using the cost of school construction by grade level today, using the square footage that we estimate based upon your capacity needs and your current construction prototypes, we're looking at $957 million in total need without inflation. Rebuilding Beverly Hills and Coltrane Webb at $50 million. 3 new elementary schools at just over $150. Rebuilding Central Cabarrus, getting rid of that portable town, and rebuilding Central Cabarrus, rebuilding Northwest, and a new high school, each at approximately $130 million. Gives you a new construction cost of $592.5, the deferred maintenance at $365.1 for your total. So this plan includes priority renovations for every school. So this is a universal plan. It is not just for growth. It is not just for the worst conditioned schools. It is looking at all of the needs and making sure every kid is in a warm, safe, cool, dry, educationally adequate, and highly resourced school. That's the bottom line. That new construction and renovations will be prioritized and phased in as funding is identified and becomes available. Phasing and timing of this will be worked in as your funding plan becomes more clear, because it's my experience doing a phasing plan without having the funding plan, you have to revisit that anyway. So we have some ideas, and of course, about how to phase this, and phasing it in a way that maximizes the use of existing swing space, so you don't have to plow more money than you have to in lost expenses like additional portables for swing space and those kinds of things. Ways to do this in a smart way that allow you to put most dollars bang for buck in the learning environment for the long haul. So, with that, happy to entertain any questions.
Dr. Kopicki.
Thank you very much, David. I appreciate the presentation. Just to kind of, I guess, clarify for the public, when you talk phase one, need a phase two, I understand what you're saying there, and I understand what you mean, that it's a long-term look.
That's correct.
Beyond 10 years, actually. But it is possible to take phase one of this particular plan and break it up into phases.
Yes,
where
sir.
you're doing,
That's correct.
when we look at capacity of elementary schools, we say it's logical to say that because the capacity exists the most there, that we would want to address that first and maybe build an elementary school or two immediately.
That's correct.
The high schools, just so the public understands this, Central Cabarrus, Tim Louder and Brian Kohner in the room, as is Dr. Bowers. It is my understanding that Central Cabarrus has the capacity and has the land already available right at site. We could rebuild Central Cabarrus right there while they're in school.
That's correct.
Figure that out. Northwest, we already have. We have been in the process of designing Northwest Cabarrus. We already have the land for that. We're ready to go on that one. Is when we talk, it's about securing the funding in the long-term plan. What phase does that fit?
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to clarify that those projects are I don't want to say up and running, but in good position to go because of some of the preliminary things that our county has done and our workforce here has done. And then new high school, the county was very thoughtful in buying and purchasing the southern piece of land in the southern part of the district, down by the Midland area there, to secure that for the future growth as well. So on a high school end, we're positioned pretty well in terms of building. Elementary schools, I don't want to say we're poorly positioned because I know that we are talking about possible places and sites, and nothing has been determined, nothing has been finalized, nothing has been secured. But it would make sense to address the elementary capacity first.
That's correct.
Okay, and then the second thing I would say now, because the last thing is, I want to reemphasize this because you did a great job with this. What I want people to understand is this is a long-term master build plan, and everybody in the district gets touched. It's not just about building schools. It's about fixing some of the, give me a moment here because I have it right in front of me. It's about touching that $365 million that will remain in deferred maintenance. That'll touch some of the construction situations, doors, windows, kitchens, bathrooms, plumbing, removing mobile units, painting, trimming, ceiling floors, gym floors. It's going to touch every school in the district. So it's not just a plan that's saying, let's just build these schools. When we say master build, we're talking about every school in this county is going to be touched by this plan, because when we address the deferred maintenance, we're improving all schools within the system. Fair statement?
That's a fair statement. And just for the public's knowledge, where these condition needs were identified again came from looking back since 2018. What have been all of the identified project needs at every school by system? And then we reconciled what's been identified in the need versus what's been actually funded. And that's where all these deficiencies in deferred maintenance are coming from. So there's already been thought into behind all of the projects that add up to that 365. It's already been thought out by the team here as to how to execute it. And the reason, again, just to reconcile it, why you go from 500 to 365 is that you are rebuilding several of the schools that have a lot of those condition needs. So you are avoiding spending that money in buildings that don't have the long-term prospect of providing you a good return on investment. And to clarify on the phasing thing, you're absolutely right. What I meant by phase one on this is that when you look at that $965 million or what have you, 957, sorry, in current dollars, that gets you to be overutilized at the end of the day in 2032 at your different grade levels, and you'll have new schools that are slightly overutilized, but not nearly in the position that you otherwise would be in. And then you're at that point going to need to build some additional capacity while you will have some other schools that will be coming up in need of rebuilding themselves. Fewer, but some. And so I would really be looking at, you're looking at 5 to 10 years as a major investment leap forward, and then it's going to be looking at the next 11 to 20 to finish it out as you go through that. So this is a long term, and every single project will be broken down into sub-phases, as Dr. Kubicki suggested, with particularly at your elementary level right now, it does make sense to start on new construction sooner rather than later, so that you can then swing kids into existing facilities during construction when needed, and avoid spending money on a bunch of mobile units where kids have to be educated in mobile units for 18, 24, 36 months, and they can be in a school, and you not have to spend that money. So yeah, those are considerations that we won't get into.
Thank you. I'll stand down and defer to my board right now. Thank you.
Board members, are there any questions for discussion? Ms. Escobar?
Thank you so much for all the data and continuing to be dedicated to us. I appreciate it. Also, thank you for all the extra focus groups. I didn't realize that the district was going to do that, so that's awesome. So there's a couple of things I just want to highlight for the public. First, that feeder pattern stuff. In your expertise throughout the entire country where you've been, that's not ideal, right? We don't want kids, and you said it, but I just want to make it clear, like, one of the things that we can achieve with this is to have continuity. So kids can mostly stay together.
That's correct.
Through to high school.
That is correct. And it's continuity for kids, and it's predictability for families, and predictability for educators, so that you can do that vertical integration. I know which elementary kids I'm getting, because I know that it's defined in a way that's sustainable. Having 7% of your kids go here, 3% of your kids go here, 27% of your kids go here, and having that smattering throughout does not provide any of those things. It happens over time. It can be remedied, and it should be, in our estimation.
So when we look at the number of elementary schools that we need, currently, you know this from our data, I mean, we have elementary schools that are over capacity right now.
Correct.
And if you drive around, which I know you have, there's new houses and new apartments coming that it's going to be faster than 4 years. Like,
Oh, sure.
those kids are coming today. So in your plan to us, I know ideally we want it to be realigned and do one and done for 10 years, but I don't think we're going to be able to do that, right?
No.
Okay.
You cannot.
So we're going to have swing time, which means, like, we might need to throw some kids at a school for a little bit to build the new schools. But, like, what would that, would you break, based on the funding source, meaning the county?
Sure.
Will you help us address that? And so I guess my biggest thing is will parents know what's going to happen with their kids?
Yes, and years in advance.
Okay.
Because when you look at when we, the funding of this, as you suggested, it's not a snap of the fingers. It takes some time, and then once you identify and have secured funds, getting the whole project life cycle, you're talking several years for a project life cycle from funding to completion. And we can, as it becomes more clear throughout the feeder pattern process and boundary process, in working discussions with the county and so forth, what the probable horizon is in terms of funding to support the plan. We can then work on the phasing and based upon priorities of need, capacity, and condition, and then confirm that with the county, and then use that timeline to phase in the boundaries. And there's really two things that you suggested in that conversation, if I heard you right. One is the boundaries themselves. Yes, some will need to change between, there'll be boundaries based on your current portfolio, and some will change when you get new construction. Some won't, but some will. and we do our best to minimize that in the planning. And then secondly, it's the swing space. Where do kids go during construction? And that is a different conversation than the boundaries.
Okay.
And so what you could be looking at here is to keep things consistent. Very often when you're looking at swing space, you say you build the new elementary school, kids are just staying where they are. And then nothing changes from a boundary and districting standpoint until that new capacity comes online.
Okay.
And then things shift when you move to the new one. And when you move to the new one, the way that we set up our plan, it's not a plan for just your worst overcrowded schools and your most underutilized schools. That's that. So we are not we do not provide recommendations that, and you can hold us accountable to this, that move kids from one overcrowded environment to the next. We are looking at the whole plan to what is going to get every kid in a overall better learning environment from a resource standpoint, from a utilization standpoint, from a condition standpoint. And so the master plan and the feeder pattern analysis are really two sides of the same coin.
But then also that continuity.
That's correct.
Right. And then lastly, so right now we're focused on the next 5 to 10 years, and then there'll be a bigger phase 2 after that for the 11 to 20. When you're analyzing the data, I feel like in my area, there's not even enough land anymore. They're not going to be, there's a cap on where we can go and grow. And then when you look at the rest of the county, there's land. I mean, it's just looking at a map, where's the houses, where they're not. So is that part of so when you're analyzing the data, is that part of it? Just where growth can go? I mean, and there's farmland that's been being turned into hundreds of townhomes. So it all depends on what the builders want to do. But it just seems like we're going to hit a limit on it maybe in the next 5 to 10 years on my side of the county. But over here, I mean, anything could happen.
That's correct. And, and a case study is the district that I actually live in.
Okay.
Our company, the same folks doing your boundaries are do the boundaries for my district. So I try not to say what I do to my neighbors. But I don't work on that project, so I'm fairly free from consternation. But what we have is part of that county. It was the fastest growing in the nation for a while, fastest growing in the state for longer. There are portions of that district where the boundaries are now, they don't move year over year over year over year because that area is built out in our language, right? It's not getting big changes in capacity. The changes in capacity and boundaries have to do on the periphery where the growth is happening and the adjacent boundaries to that periphery. And so that's exactly what you're going to see here, is you're going to see basically shoring up the boundaries in the center in a way that's going to be stable. And not to say that the others are going to be unstable, but where you have the most growth is where you're going to have some of the changes. But even that, when we look ahead, we understand sort of the student potential logic of how housing, when it matures over time, it provides different yields over time. So when we're building out these boundaries, we're doing it based on housing cycles, not just what we hear developers are going to do now and what we think they're going to do, but based upon an analysis of what has happened, what's the yield curve over time for these schools from low to high to low again over 30 years, and then using that model to build a boundary so that they have the most stability possible given the growth environment that you're in.
Ms. Lindsay?
So, I mean, we're basically needing about $1 billion to do all of this.
Round it up a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm assuming that you guys have had conversations with the county commission, and I just wondered, in those conversations, what their thoughts were as far as the funding goes and where we're going to come up with the money to be able to make this happen.
It's a great question for Dr. Kapicki to answer.
Yeah. So I would say thus far the county has been nothing but supportive and collaborating with us and gathering the information to make sure that they're aware of what's going on. So again, we're in the very early stages. It would be inappropriate for me to comment on the county's government responsibilities and funding, since I don't know that finance structure. But and as we said, none of these are written in stone. But I think the county, based on past projects and past evidence, and if you just look around this district, this county has been tremendously supportive of the school system. Just look at your schools. Look at some of since I think the first slide David showed, since 2018, we've built somewhere between 7 and 10 schools, and they have also addressed a lot of the deferred maintenance. Now I know it's challenging too, because they have a lot of other responsibilities in the schools in the county. However, in saying that, I know it doesn't make everybody happy, because we know we need more. So I think that when I came 3 years ago, one of the things that we talked about as a board and with the county a little bit was, let's do a very well thought out, research-based, evidence-driven, data-driven study, which is where we got the cooperative strategy. So I think for the county's benefit, this is helping them understand what they need to plan moving forward. And again, I would not speak for them because it would be inappropriate, but I think that the work that they have done in the district prior to me coming here, and the history that shows that they've been nothing but supportive. So I would anticipate and expect their support moving forward. And again, I think moving forward, we're looking at having more conversation meetings with them to plan that appropriately. So, hence an example of that would be you threw me a softball, so I'll hit it. A joint meeting probably is in order somewhere in the near future to sit down with them and talk a little bit more about this, and we can have that conversation with them at the table.
Thank you.
Ms. Sandage.
So you actually took my exact question, because I'm a realist. We haven't gotten a lot of money over the years for deferred maintenance, and a lot of this plan, the bulk of this plan, depends on that deferred maintenance being taken care of, in my opinion. I'm concerned that we put this plan together and that we get to where it needs to be done, and then we can't, because it's contingent upon the decisions of other people. So I would throw more of a hardball to you to make sure that our county commissioners are in every step of the process, so that they can weigh in on some of their thoughts around what we are thinking that we need to do. So again, I'm just putting my concern out there that we can do this. This is beautiful. You've done a lot of work, but it's contingent upon somebody else doing something else, and we don't know, because that's a lot of money. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I want to be clear too that the intention is to include the county, not to exclude, but to include them in the conversation, so that collectively together we can collaborate. And I do agree that the deferred maintenance is a scary monster. I mean, it's one of the things that continues to hover over us that we need to address, which is why I want to reiterate again, this is a plan that addresses everything and touches every part of the county, not just building schools. It's about addressing that deferred maintenance once and for all, so we have a plan for that long term.
Mr. Floyd.
Thank you, and thank you again for a great presentation. So I have a couple questions. My first one is, can you talk to us a little bit more about, you mentioned when it comes to phasing, and we're phasing from elementary to high here basically, and making sure that we're not hopscotching kids all around during that year. It seems to me like that's going to follow a cohort of kids from elementary all the way to graduation, where they could live in construction. But you're taking that into account. How can we make sure that we stay on top of that and don't have kids bouncing around and living in construction their whole schooling lifetime?
Excellent question. So that really goes back to front-loading new capacity when feasible, to the degree that you can also take care of your priority maintenance. The reason being is that when you're building new capacity, people can stay right where they are. You're building new capacity either on site, like Central Cabarrus High School, on the fields. Basically, you lose some fields for a few years, but then you flip the site when it's done. The building footprint becomes new fields, right? So it's status quo. Building new elementary capacity, kids at Beverly Hills and Coltrane stay where they are. New capacity is built. That's the point that they move. So they only move once into that new school. So that's part of the strategy there. And then doing that with the boundary perspective again. And as Ms. Escobar mentioned, the closer you are to the center, the more stable things are in that respect in the long view. But I hopefully that addressed your question, because that is part of the phasing logic that goes into this.
And then can you talk a little bit more about why your recommendation is to combine Coltrane and Beverly Hills?
Sure. So with that one, part of the idea here is that you've got two adjacent schools that are less than half or less than half of the square footage of what you've been building in the 7 new builds. Many of those have been elementary schools. There's a reason your new elementary schools are twice the size as this. Part of it is that the capacity back in 1937 and 1953 was designed to fund the program of 1937 and 1953, which was everybody pretty much got everything the same. And you didn't have the kinds of holistic approach to interventions, to accelerations, to not sort of just as I mentioned earlier, the sit and get, but the different kinds of learning experiences. And that just wasn't there, special education needs and so on and so forth. And so to fund those in a sustainable way, you need more kids because your operational dollars come with the kids. And so your modern elementary schools have to be larger than their counterparts 60 years ago because the program needs are more robust. And so therefore the finances are more robust. And then the way, just so that doesn't put any unnecessary confusion, larger school size and larger capacity does not mean larger class size. As we mentioned earlier, your class size has actually shrunk. So you have a compounding problems there from your capacity standpoint. But the new designs working in a neighborhood logic so that the kids stay in smaller cohorts during the day and have that community. They're just doing it in a sustainable, more resourced environment.
Mr. Walter.
Yeah, thanks for coming tonight and giving us this update. There is an awful lot of data here, and it does show that we're a growing county. But you mentioned that some of these growth projections are actually conservative, right? Since it just takes a snapshot in time.
That's correct.
Which is now. Growth's still happening. People are still coming. So these numbers are probably conservative. It's going to need more than that, and that's a scary thing to see, for me anyway. But all school construction, that's all local funding. We haven't had a huge capacity, as Keisha was mentioning, to make a huge jump in anything. We've been doing good. We have steady funding, but that's significant. Really ask for essentially the taxpayers to help to fund that massive of a construction increase. And then the other issue is when you have a new school, your operations costs go up too. So there's not just, that's not going to be steady, that's going to go up as well. And that's another ask of our county because they supplement a lot of our operations costs. It's not just the state. So that's another concern that we have to at least consider or they have to be aware of. But I guess I do appreciate this. I mean, we do have one issue. Our next presentation is a school that's under construction that's finishing up, and we don't know who's going to that school right now. You can't just have 300 kids for 700 capacity. Where are we getting the kids from? I think that needs to be our top priority right now, and then move on to these other important issues as far as what the boundaries are. But we've got to figure out how we're going to fill this school that's opening up in less than a year.
So that is one. That's why I asked the question about when we talked earlier. A phase 1 and a phase 2 type of deal. Phase 1 is addressing R. Brown McAllister immediately. So September of 24, we'll have that answer for you. We'll have the answer long before then. That if you go way back to the beginning of this, we thought we were just realigning. We thought we'd come in and do a clean realignment. Then we realized some of the other issues, and we started looking at some of the data. But as we get our focus groups together, one of the focuses is going to be on our Brown McAllister. As to right now, I believe there's roughly, do not quote me on this, 385 to 395 kids in. That might be a little high. Say 380. Our Brown McAllister kids, there's about 300 more kids that we need to realign into that school because the capacity is 756 built. So that is one of the priorities. So in my mind, that's phase one. That's part of phase one of the initial move. I think then it's sitting with the county and saying, okay, what's the reality of what does phase one of any financial support look like for 2024, so that we can perhaps start to build some elementary schools. And I think that becomes part of phase one. Now again, these are projections because we haven't had them in the room. And then I think we start planning out what the phase 2, 3, 4 look like down the road, long term for the 10-year project. But I think, again, you have to your point, Mr. Walter, yeah, and I think the other thing you need to start talking about is you got to look at the $365 million deferred maintenance and see what gets prioritized for the greatest need, the highest. What's the greatest need? What has the highest return on the projects? You want to front load a lot of that beginning, of the 10-year project life cycle. So all those things need to be taken into consideration. But our Brown McAllister, we will have that answer for you early spring to give parents enough time to. I mean, it is what it is.
Sooner the better.
I
can prepare.
I don't see that happening
Now on where they go in the
I don't
next
see that
year.
happening before Christmas. I think the reality of that is probably more towards January, February, which gives you about about 6 months notice. So again, as I said earlier, there's a lot of balls in the air, and we have to,
And then there's program choice for that school as well.
Well, again, that's another ball in the air. Program choice is another one. So I mean, that's all these things have to be taken into consideration. But we will have the answer for our Brown McAllister. I would say no later than early spring, if not earlier, but no earlier than I would say February.
I would like to see that as our phase
you will
one
you will
priority.
see that will be done. That's a definite.
And then we really need to think about, we're talking about all this capacity on that side of the county, and yeah, things are more expensive, but we need to also think about what the alternatives are. If you can't build it, what's going to happen, and offset some of that, and make sure the county's aware. If it's capping, if it's something else, can you expand any of those schools? Can you do anything? Granted, it's going to be more expensive, but is it still worth doing that than having to send kids farther away from their house and that type of thing? So.
That's an interesting question, and in some cases, yes, to some degree. In many cases, it's just challenged by there's just not the green space to do it, and that's one of the things that we looked at is expansion of buildings as some options rather than a rebuild. One of the challenges of expansion is that when you add more classrooms, the hallways don't get wider. The gym doesn't get bigger.
Correct.
And all of that stuff. And so there's a matter of, well, if you add a substantial more classrooms and the core spaces do not increase, that creates its own long-term operational challenge. And so in a modicum of capacity, yes. To replace a couple portables, sometimes. As a way to substantially expand the capacity of the school, I don't recommend it.
Well, at some point, we have to look at all the options and why that is and offset those costs.
Right.
But I do appreciate the information. There's a lot here to digest and a lot of work that your committee is going to have to go through.
Any other questions? Mr. Treadaway?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I know there's a lot of focus right now on phase one.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we don't forget the big picture, so that phase one fits into the big picture of a 10-year plan or whatever. I'm looking at you, but I'm really talking to my cohorts here. In that we have a long history of doing knee-jerk things because of short-term issues and I just want to make sure that it fits. I appreciate the fact that you talk about swing space, for example. That's, I guess, beginning with the end in mind kind of thinking. Correct. And so I just want to encourage us to all to do that. And also, I guess, the piggybacks with that, it just seems like as a steward of public money, we are spending a lot of good money on bad facilities right now. And if we can get out of that, we are actually going to save money. And so I know it takes money to save money. I fully appreciate that. And then the other thing is we talked about feeder districts, and rightfully so. Our first thing that we think about is our students and breaking up peer groups and things like that. But if you could go to the feeder group, the feeder pattern for Concord High School, I just want to point out from a staff perspective one other variable of inefficiency.
Oh, wrong way. I'll catch up to you.
If you look at that, we usually ask our counselors, our school counselors, to kind of oversee the transition process from elementary to middle and middle to high. Imagine being a counselor at Concord Middle School. You're registering and transitioning kids from 6 different schools in a very short window in the spring. That inefficiency hurts kids. That's just an example. I mean, there's others there. But so it's not just breaking up peer groups and all that. It's also building those alliances between those different tiers of the high school, middle, and elementary that are sustainable.
That's correct. Absolutely.
And the last thing I'll say, being the dinosaur here, our ACE card has always been mobile units. And I just want everyone to understand that's no longer the trump card that we can play, it seems like, system-wide.
You've used that strategy.
Yes.
It's time for another one.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So I just want to echo those points, two of those points. Number one, again, it's an excellent point that the reason why the focus has to be on a lot of deferred maintenance is because we are spending, you don't want to be sending the money down the drain. I appreciate that point, Mr. Treadway. I would also ask you to hammer the point home, to go the feeder pattern. I think it's one backwards to the West Cabarrus High School situation, and take a look at that for a moment. You want to talk about stress on our guidance department. These are people behind these numbers, and kids and humans. So we're cognizant of that. But you have 5 middle schools going into 1 high school. I mean, these are things that have to be corrected, and this isn't good for kids. So there's a lot that goes into this, and we are really engaged in this process to try and get this right long term, so that we make good decisions. And I know there's a lot of balls in the air again. I keep saying that, and there's a lot of things going on here, and a lot of money invested. But I just that we have to focus. It's all about kids and people. So thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Thank you for your presentation.
My pleasure. Thank you all.
Board members, will move to 8.03 with our construction update, and Mr. Brian Cone. Welcome, Mr. Cone.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Get the presentation keyed up. All right, so this is your September update on all things construction in the district. We'll start with our Brown McAllister. Work continues on the architectural metal panels on the veneer of the building around there. You can see in that image there on the right the panels on the bump outs there in between the classroom wings. They've also begun installing sidewalks, connective sidewalks from the exterior doors at the classrooms on those wings as well. Our standing seam metal roof has been delivered this past week, and the installation of it will begin, so that'll kind of be our last roofing element that will be going into place. All the exposed structures, all the high ceilings inside the spaces, the gymatorium, the cafeteria, all of our common areas in the front end of the school, those structures are getting painted now. You do that before we get started on any of the acoustical ceilings. We do have grid work that is beginning to take place in the A wing, so that's our last area of the school to start ceiling grid installation. So once that takes place, then we'll start dropping lights in and registers and diffusers for air conditioning. We still have drywall finishing continuing in the media center and administrative spaces. One of our big milestones this week, Wednesday, we're scheduled to turn permanent power onto the school. That is ahead of being able to move air probably in the next 2 weeks in the school. So that's a big milestone. City of Concord will be there. They'll have to shut down and disconnect the temporary power that we have and make the transition over to permanent power. So also the monument stairs, we Had a little bit of a design error on one of the monument stairs, and it finally got delivered. So that last set of stairs is being delivered at the entrance of classroom wing C in the back there. So that's kind of our last big set of steel stairs that needs to go in. And then mechanical piping continues to be installed to all the air handlers throughout the school, as I said, just ahead of air being moved here in the next few weeks. That's that last set of monument stairs there in the back. We have Cabarrus space kind of up underneath that will have some whiteboard walls that kids will be able to sit at. And again, there's one of the air handlers and all the piping that has to go to it. And, there's about 15 air handlers in this school spaced out. See, brick veneer on the outside of the building is 100% complete. So we're now in the process of pointing up and punching out the veneer for the brickwork. We are going to begin our overhead inspections with the trades, the plumbing, mechanical, electrical contractors, as well as our CCS facility staff. So what we do is we'll bring all of those individual departments in, let them walk with the contractors. They'll look at all the systems and things that have been put in overhead and identify any deficiencies or challenges that they see going forward from a maintenance standpoint that they have to take care of. And we address them before ceiling tiles go in. Again, the acoustical ceiling clouds will be installed in the next few weeks ahead, just behind all the structures that are getting painted. Data closets, they're getting cleaned because in the next few weeks we'll begin cabling into the building. We're also finalizing and improving the mock-ups on the stair finishes. It's one of the big things we do. Obviously, we don't want to have to wax and take care of stairs, and we've removed all the flooring, so we're getting a mock-up of those stairs done for us so that the staff can see them as well as district leadership. The bus lot, so that's kind of the last large area of grading that will take place. It's been the laydown space for the contractor. That will begin getting graded here in the next few weeks so that we can get it covered up before we get into the wet months of late fall and early winter. And then the last final step, some drainage around our synthetic turf areas. They're getting those installed as we begin to start buttoning up the outside. Looking back into the classroom wing, and that's the kind of the large concrete pathway that goes into the back entrance of the school that also doubles as our emergency access for fire. And then that's the main monument stairs in the front of the school when you walk into it. Just a few updates on our diversity spend. You can see we're just a little bit north of $6.3 million. Well past our goal, as I said we would be. And you can see our billing today, we're about 65.5% billed out on the project itself. And what we have captured there in sales tax on to date, the $500 and close to $70,000. That's a view looking in the gymatorium. Weather days, we're kind of catching back up as we get into the end of summer here. Again, you can see we had 90 days planned built into the schedule to date, and we've actually used 102. So not a big delta there that we're having to catch up on. And then roughly 70% complete on the job itself. Here's just a couple of images. That's the media center there on your right. It's looking west towards the classroom wings, and that large concrete pathway, you can kind of see where it's being graded out there in between, and areas on either side of that pathway up to the school will be synthetic turf for the kids to be able to go out and enjoy. That's the bus entrance on the left-hand side there with the screen wall, and then essentially our loading dock area and the mechanical yard with the air handler. Then there's just a further back aerial, kind of looking over the horizon, looking east. And there's one further back giving you a relationship to the existing campus of R. Brown McAllister. Any questions on R. Brown?
Any discussion, board members?
All right, moving on to Northwest Cabarrus.
Brian has tell you, you guys are doing a great job. I live in the neighborhood. My kids go to school there, and I just want to tell you it's gone really well. The traffic has been unaffected. I mean, you could not have been doing a better job than you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Floyd. So Northwest Cabarrus. So we did receive our first budget pricing exercise from Shelco LLC, the construction manager at risk. That current estimated cost came in at roughly $114 million for the total development of the site. There obviously are costs beyond that, your technology, your FF&E, your startup cost. But the construction and the development of the site itself came in at $114 million, which is actually a little bit less than what we had anticipated. You know, I sound positive about that because we are going to value engineer down from there. So it's a good starting point to have, and we'll start working our way back. There will be some fluctuations, and it will evolve over time as we get into next iterations of drawings, but kind of gives us a starting point for conversations with the county as to what we anticipate seeing this budget for the construction being. We did have our first value engineering meeting with the architects and the civil engineer this past week, and had the contractor in the room too, just going through the site, looking at different elements and things that we could do to help cut cost. We have not heard anything back from NCDOT or MSTA on our TIA, so we continue to follow up with them. Usually is about a 90-day process once they get all the documents in hand to go through that review and give their recommendations and funding memos back to us. And we are doing a little bit more survey work on the very north end. We've created a separate bus entrance off the development north of us to be able to bring buses in and out of this campus. So we had to do a little bit of additional surveying work. These images you see here on the right, these are the rendered models that are starting to be generated for us. Gives a little bit more tangible look as to what the inside of the school will look like. Any questions on Northwest?
Ms. Sandage?
Can you tell me what VE, MSTA, and TIA stand for?
VE is value engineering. So we look at the value of a scope of work, and is there a way that we can do it more cost effectively or change materials or methods or means to save cost, but yet get the same end result. So when we say VE, it does get generalized, so I apologize. MSTA is the Municipal School Transportation Assistance Group. They are the I'm going to say loosely the governing arm of NCDOT when it comes to school traffic internally on the campus. They don't look at it from the impact of how you affect the state highway road system. There's another group called Congestion Management that handles that. But when we meet with NCDOT, MSTA is the first group we look at because they've established all the values of how much queuing capacity we have to have on site so that we're not backing cars up out onto the state highway road system. So they give recommendations, they look at all the site layouts and the queuing and how we're maneuvering traffic through the campus itself. And then one, making sure we're not impacting the state highway road, but we're also making sure it's safe. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and TIA?
Traffic impact analysis. Okay. It's the study of the traffic as it relates to the project.
Mr. Treadaway.
I'm just curious what the clear story over the main entrance is.
That is the main common area, so you can kind of see the light spilling down right there.
Okay.
Those are just they're actually units that would set up on the roof, for lack of a better term, like a skylight, but it's very large, just to provide natural light into that common area.
Any other questions? I do want you just to let the public know, how long does it take to build an elementary school?
So in elementary school, we figure roughly 2 years to build an elementary school. For a middle school, we'll figure 30 months, 2.5 years. Typical high school, if we're really going hard at it, we'll get it done in 3 years.
Thank you.
That is to build it.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Any more?
Ms. Escobar.
Has Cabarrus County ever built more than one school at a time?
Yes, ma'am, we have.
Okay.
And most recently, Hickory Ridge Elementary School and West Cabarrus High School were built at the same time.
Thank you.
And opened it during COVID with no kids. All right, moving on. Quick update on J.M. Robinson and the Mondo track. So, yay, the Mondo people showed up. So they have started installing the surface for us. They've completed the Javelin run-up. They are, in fact, I was out there this morning. They've completed the D-zone installation the end of last week, and they actually started on the track area itself. We had a long meeting a week and a half ago with Patrick Helm, the AD. assuring him that we would not impact any of his schedules. The superintendent from Mondo and Patrick, we all basically met out on the field and said, I need the field now, I need it for practices, and they worked out where he could practice and how he could do it. So it's been a great collaborative effort on both parts, making sure that we don't impact what they're doing at the school for the kids. One big thing that we have going on is the dedication ceremony for the Mondo surface will be on October the 17th at 9:30, and you all will be getting an invitation for that. So just put that on your radar. Any questions? That's the long jump and triple jump runways in the D zone. And then there's the D zone that's getting finished up. All right, last quick update for Hickory Ridge High School and the turf field. So most of you were able to enjoy that celebration on Friday evening. They did what they said they would do. They'd had it done and ready for us. They were out there that morning spreading crumb rubber and making it look good, but they finished in time. They are working this week just on some minor punch list items that they need to take care of for us. And our next big goal on that project is in October. I hope to bring the track contract to you so that they can begin the track surfacing part of that project.
Mr. Floyd?
Are these going to be 6-lane or 8-lane tracks?
So this one will be an 8-lane track.
And Robinson
is an 8-lane as well, yes,
Very
sir.
good.
And that is all I had for you. Are there any questions from anybody?
Any more questions? Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, board members, we'll move to 9.01, our consent agenda. We have many items on our consent agenda. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
I have a motion by Ms. Lindsay, a second by Mr. Walter. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented say aye. Aye. Opposed? The consent agenda has been approved. We'll move to items for action. 10.01, Hickory Ridge Middle School request for land purchase. Welcome, Mr. Louder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for board members. Last week we spoke to you about the request from Multiply Church to purchase a portion of the property adjacent to Hickory Ridge Middle School, and I'm here today to answer any questions. Also, in the audience, Pastor Wesley Shell is here. Should you have any questions that I can't ask about what your intentions are, he's back there. And is there anything you need to ask me about this request?
Ms. Sandich?
I sent about 4 questions in last week that I had, and I didn't get a response to them unless I missed it.
I answered them that day.
So,
I'll be glad to answer them for you if you want to.
sure. So any previous decisions by CCS where a church has requested to purchase land from one of our schools, what church and when was the first question I asked. If there have been any surveys that have been completed on the land in question, meaning have we looked at this land in any capacity to tell us what could be potential use, should we keep it, or should we sell it, any of those kind of discussions. And then the next question I asked was any political motivation around this venture. The next question I asked was any communication from Multiply Church to CCS leadership about the specific request for land. I wanted to see that.
Well, I'll give you the answers that we put in the thing, Dr. Kapicki. One, yes, we have sold land to I think I answered that question last week, but the first one that I dealt with when I get here, 2017, Mount Gilead Methodist Church here off Old Salisbury Road. There was a piece of property there. It was actually considered to be, the actual deed said it was a Cabarrus County graded school district. That tells you how long ago that was. We didn't even know we owned the piece of property, but we did. And the church had built a parking lot on that piece of property, and there was an adjacent property behind it as well that had driveways crossing it, and both parties needed to have the use of that property permanently, and both approached me to buy it, and one was going to buy it and almost cut off the other one, and the other one buy it, take out the church. So I had a little come to Jesus meeting with both their attorneys and said, we'll split it, and I'll sell this part that benefits you to this side, and this part to the church that already had a parking lot on it. And about 3 months later, they all worked out the legalese, and I bought it before the board, and we sold
Was that the old Concord, Salisbury Road?
Old Salisbury Road, yes, sir. Mount
That
Gilead.
didn't have there wasn't any school there anymore, though. That was
No, sir, no.
That was an old piece of
That's a
property.
little one-room schoolhouse was there probably 100-some years ago. But
So
it just-
nowhere close to an existing school.
Yeah, we actually had the property that we just didn't know we had. But anyway, that's when the property sales at. So that's what I'm aware of, because I took care of that one, okay? As far as the survey, there's been no survey on the property, because until once we agree to sell it, or Cabarrus County starts that negotiation, then they'll create a survey as to what they agree to buy. You wouldn't spend money to survey something not knowing if they're going to sell it or not. It's me. I said, I think I'm going to buy your house. I think I'll go ahead and survey it. And say, I don't want to sell it. I'm going to survey it anyway. You know, but they
I might be asking that wrong. I'm trying to identify whether or not we have looked at this land for any other potential use for Cabarrus County schools or any other entity, and that may not be the survey that I'm
talking about
saying.
land survey. No, ma'am. We have looked at it as far as the school use for the property. Right now, it's just property we mow. And it's in a field we try to mow twice a year just to keep it from growing up. But it's, like I said, again, almost 50% of it's floodplain, so it really doesn't have much other use for us. And it acts basically as extra land. When the school was built, that just wasn't needed. The property actually was condemned at the time. They had to purchase the entire parcel, so it actually had a little bit of land left over. But it's not big enough really to put any other building on, freestanding by any means, because it's only 2 acres of it, or acre, is out of floodplain. So it's really not much of use to us other than just being a green space buffer beside the school.
I'll just wait for the information, but thank you.
Okay, Mr. Walter.
Yeah, similar to that. It says the area requested currently not developed and will not be developed for any future school needs. Where is the study that backs any of that up? I mean, is that just your opinion?
Well,
or is
that's pretty much what I do for you. I
so-
go out there and decide whether or not you need a school building here or a school building to fill a piece of property. If it doesn't, then you don't need it.
That won't be used for school purposes. Okay, I kinda just needed more clarification on what that was. Like, so there was somebody who did a study that said that's not land that will ever be a school use. And then the other thing, it says that it's being used by Harrisburg Parks and Recs for events. So there is somebody who wants to use this property
If you
or
look-
uses it
If you look at the
currently.
map that I have attached to your thing, the map we attached, it shows you the piece of property, and it shows you the little parcel adjacent to the property line. As you can see, all the land in the back are 2 fields that's used by Park and Recreation. You can see in the aerial there, right next to the 500-year floodplain.
Right, but you said it was for
And
parking.
the only thing that goes through here is that driveway going down to the back. It's not really, it's just grass. So people just use it because they're too darn lazy to park in the parking lot, and they park in that grass instead of walking down to the field. That's the only reason it's being used for anything.
Well, maybe Harrisburg Parks and Rec wants to make a parking lot there at some point if they had.
Well, sir, I think that's part of the use that the church is wishing to do. They wish to develop a gymnasium and some athletic fields to join in conjunction with the Harrisburg athletic facility to provide additional athletic facilities for the youth of Harrisburg.
We've not been given any of that plans for the lot or the plan. I mean, you've got somebody here if who wants to speak about that. I'm open to hearing that, but we haven't got anything before this.
Is there anything I need to add to that?
Is there a drawing? Is there anything? Or is there?
No, sir, because again, without knowing you're going to sell the property, you don't really go to a lot of expense on trying to develop.
I know that, but you're trying to get, again, this is taxpayer property, and we're stewards of that. And it's, for me, when I look at something, it's got to benefit the kids. And how does it benefit the kids of Cabarrus County? I don't even know how much money we would get for it to even make that determination. So,
No, technically, you don't own it as a school board. You don't own this piece of property.
well, the
It's
county
owned by
does.
Cabarrus
Obviously, the county funds schools.
And
So
the county will decide whether or not it's sold for what price it's sold for. All we're asking you for is your consensus to say, as a school board, I have no objection to the county entering negotiations to sell the property.
I don't have enough information to make that determination. So, all right. Thank you.
Ms. Sandage.
Do you know why we would not sell it to Harrisburg if that's the intent to make it for? Is it just because they haven't inquired?
The property in itself is not big enough. Property added to the church property creates an area big enough to do something with. Does that make sense? In other words, the property standalone is not big enough to do anything to develop a recreation. But if there's property that the school or the church already owns, when you add this property to it, it gives enough space then to build a gymnasium and to add athletic fields. But by itself, it does not.
Mr. Walter.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It appears that there's also a creek that runs through there?
The creek runs at the very back of the property, sir.
It does? It's what?
Creek runs at the very back of the property.
There's something that runs across where the tree line is. Is that not a creek? What is that?
You see the
Is that a
map I
drainage?
gave you. You see the 100-year floodplain and the 500-year
Yeah, in the
floodplain?
back, but between the two properties, there's a tree line. Looks like there's some type of a
That's just
drainage.
That was a fence line where the fence
So there's
line
not a
used to be.
drainage thing
That's
there or creek of some sort.
It's just where the birds crept over the years and trees grew up on the
Yeah.
fence line. Again, it was a dairy farm at one time, and it was just a fence line. That's what that was there before.
Okay, board members, any other discussion? Ms. Escobar?
So just to confirm, what you've been told from the church is that they're interested in using this for a gymnasium and additional fields?
Yes, ma'am.
So their intention is it's for kids? But also, to be fair, it's not all kids. It's all kids, any kids who go to that church.
It's actually any kids with them joining forces with Harrisburg.
Okay.
There would be recreation departments would all use all three fields intermingling there. They would create another field besides the two that's there.
Okay, but we can't hold them to that. We don't have any ability to do that. And then also, to be clear, our decision, if we were to say yes, we're not the final say. Who has the final say?
Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners.
Thank you.
We really don't have a say other than say if we let's be clear. If you objected to it, Cabarrus County would not enter negotiations. Yes. Yes.
Does the pastor want to come up and say anything about this? Maybe he can help us.
I would love to.
Sorry to put you on the spot there, sir.
No, you're okay. That's all right. That's what we do. Our intentions for this property is to do exactly what the county desires to do, to create opportunities for students to thrive in their community, to grow in relationship with one another. Our goal, we have already been in communication with Parks and Rec directors like Jim Spina in Harrisburg, that we have been trying to pursue the goal of not growing our church, but to continue to create an excellent community for students in our county. I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and the thing that they look to most forward to when they come to church on Sunday mornings is in between services when 20 kids, probably too many kids, are playing on our playground together, hanging out together. Our goal as a church is to continue to create opportunity for that and to foster those relationships through the Parks and Rec opportunities through basketball. We know that just in Harrisburg alone that we have thousands of kids that are signing up, and we don't have the gymnasiums to keep up with them quickly. Just like the schools are growing, it's impacting our Parks and Rec system. We don't desire to acquire this property for the benefit of the church alone, but we want to benefit our community and create greater space for students and families to continue to grow and thrive in our community. So that's why we look at things like gymnasium and also parking. We've been in conversation with the Greenway of Harrisburg that is currently planned to run through Hickory Ridge through our church property across the bridge. We have been open to every Greenway, everything that they want to do. We've even offered up our parking lot to be the trailhead for the Greenway, because we desire not just to be something that's growing an empire of our own. We want to benefit our community because that's what the church was designed to do.
Any questions for him?
Do we have any of that in writing? I mean, I love the idea, but is it down on paper somewhere?
In our request in the email sent, we just put down the desired plan of what we would love to do. We have a multiple year plan on how we would love to leverage this space to benefit the community when it comes to gymnasiums and even outreach centers. We've begun to partner with schools in our community. Just this past week, our kids' pastors went to 5 different schools and brought them snacks and different gifts for the teachers. And we're starting to become a food pantry for a couple of them whose families need them. Our goal is to have a portion of that property become a gymnasium that's accessible to the Parks and Rec system for kids to be able to play every weekend and practice on the weekdays, to have more fields to create space for kids to do that as well, parking to help those families be able to do that safely. And then also we are super passionate about the performing arts, so anything that we're doing in the future as we build as a church isn't just to build for us, it's to create space for community to happen.
You haven't gone to the town of Harrisburg, you don't have it, do they have have you presented to the town of Harrisburg? You have it?
The plans for the property? Our understanding of what our first step would be to start communication with this so that we don't run too far down the road before we even ask the question of what's possible. But we've started questions of all of these things with Parks and Recs, and we're very involved in communications with them. I mean, we talk to them monthly because every town event and county event that happens there, we're a sponsor of. We show up for. We are a sponsor for the Hickory Ridge football field. We're a platinum sponsor because we're passionate about benefiting our community. But I felt like this was the first step to take, so we've just begun here.
Right. Well, really, all we can do is say we don't need it, and let the county take care of that part of it. But I would have liked to see more to make this educated decision on that.
Okay.
Just based on the conversation is nice, but we don't have anything in writing for me. Anyway.
Yeah.
Mr. Treadaway?
We've had a lot of discussion. We haven't had a motion. I'm prepared to make a motion that we approve this negotiation for the sale of this property.
I'll second.
I'll second.
All right.
That's good. You have it.
Okay, so I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Treadaway and a second by Ms. Lindsay to approve the request for land purchase. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Okay.
Is that even the right motion? That's not even the power we have. We only have the power to say it's surplus, right? We don't have the power to say negotiate with a certain group.
Yes, your question, the impact of the motion is to declare it surplus.
That's not what the motion was.
If you need to rephrase it, then.
Okay.
Okay, because it says school request for land purchase is on the agenda. That's where I read that from, Mr. Walter.
Yeah, the motion came from the language in our agenda.
That's right. So the motion is there. We have a second, and we have voted, and that vote was approved. So we had a majority, 5-2. So
Thank you.
that's that.
At this point, I'll take it to Cabarrus County, and they'll begin negotiations with the church.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to move to 10.02, policies for approval on first reading with Dr. Sandy Ward and Mr. Gil Middlebrooks.
Thank you. In your materials, you should have a revision to policy 2342, which as you will recall, there was a conflict in two of the board policies having to do with remote voting. So the proposed change in 2342 takes out the prohibition about remote voting and says that it will not be permitted at personnel or student hearings, but otherwise would be governed by policy number 2302. And this is coming to you only on a first reading, off cycle, and if you're agreeable to it, it would be an actual action item for your work session, the first meeting in October, because it's my understanding that one or more of you may need to miss the business meeting in October, and so we thought it was appropriate to bring this to you and have it cleared up.
Okay, board members, is there any questions about the policy changes? And I see Dr. Ward.
How'd I do, Dr. Ward?
You did great.
Thank you.
Really did.
Do you want to add anything to this conversation? Okay. Any questions? Mr. Walter?
Okay, I think it simplifies things, makes it easier to see, but it does say remote voting will not be permitted at personnel or student hearings. And we have done that in the past due to COVID. So as long as we're not having COVID again and not able to meet in person, I think we're fine there. But if we ever have a situation where we're stuck,
Yeah,
we
my
can't be
re-
in person,
Right. My recollection is that if you are in an emergent situation for meeting purposes, then you can have remote voting for all purposes.
Okay.
There.
All right. Well, I think it simplifies it, so I think it's a good change.
That was a good question, though, to make that clear.
Any other questions about that?
Can I just ask for clarification?
Ms. Escobar?
Thank you. So voting remotely will not be permitted at personnel and student hearings, but any other board meeting is okay?
That's right, unless it's an emergency situation like in COVID, when everything was remote.
Okay.
And we had personnel hearings, or you had student hearings during COVID where everything was remote because of the state declared emergency. Under those limited circumstances, all voting could be remote.
And that's in policy 2302?
If
So
I recall
we don't
correctly.
need the word emergency
Right, we don't.
because it's covered in
Right.
2302. Okay,
The,
thank you.
the notion is for regular meetings, you cannot participate remotely on matters involving student hearings or personnel hearings.
Any other questions? So is everyone in agreement to put this on the consent agenda for the October 2nd work session?
Approve it in first read, right?
This is the first read, yes, sir.
So I make a motion that we approve this policy on first read.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Walter, a second by Ms. Lindsay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, board members, we're going to move to 11.01, where we are going to convene in closed session. I need a motion that the board convene in closed session to consult with its attorney pursuant to General Statute 143, 318, 11A3, and to consider confidential personnel matters pursuant to General Statute 143, 318, 11A6.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Floyd, a second by Ms. Lindsay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are now in closed session. Thank you, everyone.